Hello, everyone. Welcome to the August Sales Skills Training webinar being presented by David Hoffeld. As you have seen on the RB Academy notices, this webinar will train on how to master the art and science of asking high-value questions throughout the entire REBAS sales process. So at this time, let me introduce David Hoffeld.
Thank you, Wendy. And thank you to all of you who are joining us today as we talk about another really important topic, and that is asking high value questions. And last month, we went into the discovery, right? That early part of the sale where we begin asking our potential clients questions to really understand why we're in the home and what they want to accomplish. But we leverage questions not only early in the sales process, but throughout the entire sale, right? Through the inspection and into the actual digital presentation, and then into the design phase, and then in closing and handling objections. We're always asking questions. So how do we do that well? And though you have in your script and in some of the videos on the virtual learning a number of questions that we use as starting points, for those of you who are listening today who are salespeople and have been doing it for a while, and even those of you who aren't salespeople, we all know that great salespeople, one of the things that makes them great is they ask high value questions. So how do you do that? Today I want to share with you a model that is very effective at allowing you to on the fly ask these kind of questions, meaning it's great to have some introductory questions to get a conversation started, but that's not enough. You have to be able to adapt to the client that you're talking to and really serve them by asking great follow-up questions. How do you do that? That's what we're going to discover today. And so as we begin our time together, I want to ask you all a question, and that is, how can you create high gain follow-up questions? And as always, I'll give you a couple options here. Choose which one you think is the best. Just focus. Number one, just focus on the discovery questions in the sales script. Number two, ask second level questions. Number three, memorize some good follow-up questions. And number four, ask questions that shows you care. So Wendy, how can our participants vote on which of these options they think is the best answer?
Yep, so you should all see a poll on your screen now. Using your mouse or your finger, click your answer, and then once everyone completes their selection, I will close the poll, and at that time you'll see a recap of the answers, and David will review the results. So we have about a quarter of everybody voted, half so far. A few more people need to vote. Looks like we're almost ready to close the poll. All right, we're going to go ahead and close up the poll and review the results.
All right. Oh, look at this. I think this is the first poll where we've had at least a few people pick every option. So this one was tougher, Wendy. I think the last few polls, it's been tough to get anyone to choose anything but the right answer. But let's talk about these. All right, this is exciting now. So number one and number three were the least chosen options. Number one, just focus on the discovery questions in the sales script. And number three, memorize some good follow-up questions. Real briefly about them, we just talked about though the discovery questions in the sales script is imperative. That's a great introductory point. What makes great salespeople is they can get beyond that. So that's a good starting point, but if we stay there, what the data shows is pretty conclusive. You won't be able to achieve a very high level in selling. The reason why is questions reveal the answer to how we should sell, meaning how do I customize my sales presentation? How do I get buy-in to certain things? If all I'm doing is asking those discovery questions, I'm going to struggle with that. In other words, I've been doing this for Rebath. I think I was just telling Wendy before the webinar. I've been working with Rebath franchises. I think it's about 7 years now, which is like a really long time. And thinking back over my time working with some good and some mediocre and some horrendous salespeople in Rebath, um, the ones that are good, one of the things that makes them good is this questions, asking good questions. But what I've also seen is the opposite. People that only focus on the discovery questions, what's in the script, though that's a good starting point. You need to do that. But if that's your skill level, if that's all you're doing, you will never get to a high level within Rebath. I cannot think of one example of that. And by high level, I mean someone that wins more than they lose, right? Very high closing rates consistently. Not 1 week, not 1 month, not 1 day, but consistently year after year. Number 3, memorize some good follow-up questions. Not a bad place to start, but it's insufficient because there's so much, sales is so dynamic, you can't memorize your way to success. Now, memorization is important. You need to probably memorize the script when you're beginning, but you got to get beyond that. All right, let's get into the other two. We had a tie. This has never happened for either before. This is so exciting for me. Number 2 and number 4 both tied. 44% of you said ask second level questions, and number 4, ask questions that show that you care. I thought I would get some people with number 4. I really did. I was pretty optimistic that would do that. Number 4, we can talk about all day. I'm not going to, though it's great to show you care. The best way is, the research shows extremely conclusively, is asking second level questions. And we'll talk about why that is and how to do that. So, what a great poll. I'm gonna save this one. Okay. Let's move on and let's talk about questions as we get into this, because if we ask good second level questions, it would show that we care, to those of you who chose that option. But even more than that, it will show that we understand, and it will also demonstrate your competency as well, which is really what people care about. I don't care so much if someone's selling something to me that they care about me, because let's be honest, they probably don't. What I care about, though, is that they can help me with things that I care about, right? I care about what I want. I don't really care what they think, right? Can you help me with this issue? If they can demonstrate that, I'm in. So let's talk about questions, though. There's so much research on questions. We're going to cover this in about 10 seconds. Real quickly, and that is what questions do. They influence buying behavior. A lot of great research on this. We have some of this in the videos and in my book as well, I'll refer you to. But questions have been shown alarmingly to improve buying rates. Even asking people if they're going to do something. One study found that if you ask people if they're going to purchase a new car within the next 6 months, those people just being asked that question are 35% more likely to actually purchase a car. Not only that, but questions have been shown to increase many things, including sales. A lot of really interesting studies on this. This is one of the unique areas where academics have looked at how our brains work, and they leverage sales a lot when it comes to at least how we're influenced by questions, because it's a very easily quantifiable way to see, is this working or not? How does this influence behaviors? And so we have a lot of research, decades now, to draw from. So let's get into it. What do questions do? One of the things I want to call your attention to that is really important before we get into the model for asking follow-up questions is something that's really easy to overlook, but it's incredibly powerful and very useful in sales and in lead setting. That's right, even in lead setting too. And the best way I like to illustrate it is if I ask someone, what color is your car? Which I often do when I'm in seminars and workshops, and people will stop for a minute and they'll get a weird look on their face and they'll say yellow or black or blue or whatever the color of the car is. And then I continue on. But the reason I do that is to demonstrate one thing. I'll ask the audience, for that split second, what was that individual thinking about? And the obvious answer is the color of their car. Exactly. So questions are very impactful for controlling a sale or controlling a situation. We control with questions. Right now, it might appear that I'm the one talking, at least audibly, that for all of us to hear, because some of you are on mute, I'm sure you're talking. but we can't hear you. We hear me. So I might have the appearance of control, but if I were to stop and ask one of you, what color is your car, or what color is your house, or what color are the shoes you're wearing on your feet, for that split second, we all know what you'll be thinking about. So that's what we want to do in sales. We have to get people to interact and elaborate, think through some ideas. Questions are the most effective way to do that. So let's talk about that. What the research shows is really interesting and really important when it comes to selling. Questions literally hijack our mind. And there's a lot of data on this. I won't get into it. I can refer you to some resources if you want to investigate them on your own. That shows that when, for example, a person is thinking about the color of the car, when posed the question, what color is your car? That's all they're thinking about. Really interesting. We cannot multitask thoughts. Overwhelming amount of research on that. You can just Google multitasking is a myth. I have articles on it, but there's so much on this now. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of stuff. It's very common science that I'm sure many of you are even aware of because it goes against conventional wisdom that wasn't so wise. And so what that means, though, for us in sales is I can control the sale. I can control my potential clients' thoughts with questions, right? Our brain cannot concentrate in multiple stimuli at the same time. Let me hit you with a phrase I made up to describe this that I think is important, and we'll talk about why this matters in just a second, and I'll apply it. Questions are the closest form of mind control that we have access to. I call it instinctive elaboration. In other words, when someone asks you what color is your car, your mind instantly goes to the color of your car. Your mind doesn't say, okay, should I think about the car? Well, yeah, go ahead. No, none of that happens. It's instinctive. When someone says, what state do you live in? Something pops in your head, right? It's just instinctive. It's instinctive elaboration. And it's a very powerful mental reflex we have as human beings that we can literally control what each other think about via questions. And so we need to leverage this in the sale because it's incredibly, incredibly powerful. And so oftentimes we think, as I mentioned earlier, the one who's talking is the one in control. Not necessarily, because while I'm talking right now, you can be thinking about anything. But if I were to ask you, what color is your car? Something as simple as that, I can predictably know what you're thinking about as you reflect on the question. So how do we use this in the real world of sales? Let me give you a scenario, something that I've taught to many, many companies, including Rebath, both in the sales and the Rebath lead setting process as well. Something called a thought redirect. What is that? It's using a question to interrupt a potential customer's thought process and redirect it to another topic. Well, how would I use that? Let me give you an example. You're in the inspection and someone asks you what your walls are made of. Okay, so you've done the arrival, you've done a warm-up, you've done a discovery, you did an intent statement beautifully. Now you're in the inspection, you're just starting it. And they ask you, you're asking them about their tile walls, for example, and they say, what are your walls made of? You have a choice. You can start talking about what your walls are made of and go into the Rebath presentation. But as those of you who are experienced and or successful know, that's always a bad move. You don't want to steal from your presentation later on, right? Because we need to get certain commitments later on. So we need to answer this question, but we can't go into a sales pitch about Rebath now. That's premature and will always hurt our sales results, right? No one who I know who's highly successful in Rebath and has been for a while would ever do that. So what do you use? Well, what's above there? The thought redirect, right? You leverage questions. Here's what that would look like. Thought redirect is I answer their question in a brief phrase or two, and then I redirect them. I control the sale and by asking them a question. So for example, they say, what are your walls made of? And I say, well, our walls are made out of a material called Durabath. And I have some samples I can show you when we get back down to the table. But I did notice that the caulk around your tub looks new here. Did you recaulk this area? The potential client's going to say, well, yeah, I did a few. What are they thinking about now? The recaulking, right? I control the thought. If you think this is a minor issue, keep thinking. This is big. This is absolutely critical. You need to understand how to do this, and it's so simple to do. You can use this in lead setting, right? We need to guide people in thinking through certain ideas in a certain sequence to get them the outcome they need. and want and deserve. So we have to control the process for that to happen. We can't let them hijack things because they haven't gone through all this training and they don't know the order of information they need in the certain sequence, and they don't know all that. And so we do a disservice to them. In other words, when you don't leverage things like this and you let the customer control, you lose sales that should be yours. And more importantly, people that need Rebath, that need what we offer, don't buy. Why? Not because of Rebath, but because of how they were sold to. They were sold to by a poor salesperson. And we don't want that to be you. And by poor, I mean skill-wise and probably financially too. So this is what we use. So the power of questions, right? So simple. Yeah, they control the mind, right? Of course. Are you leveraging them in that way, right? Very impactful. Thought redirects can revolutionize how you control the sale in non-competitive ways and also lead setting. We have clients that leverage this a lot when developing new business and prospecting, right? It's incredibly powerful throughout every stage of the sale. You control with questions. All right. So that was just the appetizer. Let's get to the main course and talk about how do we ask these high gain questions, right? That was just a little strategy that you can use to produce big results, controlling the sale. How do we do that? So one of the questions that we ask many years ago is, how does our brain disclose information? Because I had a thought way long time ago. And it was, if I knew how our brains disclosed information, I could make a questioning model that was aligned with that. Or is that, it's kind of a hypothesis. Because most questioning models are just mimicry. You know, you mimic how one person asks questions, and that doesn't work in every situation, and there's no evidence of causality, and I could go on and on. I think I have some of this in my book, but it's counterproductive, and you can't innovate by looking in the mirror and all these fun things. So how does the brain disclose information? We know real quickly. Give me 1 minute for this. It's called social penetration theory. 2 researchers put it out. Here's what they said. Nothing too revolutionary here, although when it's applied, it is. What they say, our brain reveals information sequentially in layers. Like they say, it's like peeling back layers of an onion. That we as human beings are like that, and you know that. You go to a dinner party, you meet someone, they reveal basic information, you keep talking to them, you ask them some questions, and they reveal more and more, and then it gets more and more interesting, or more and more scary, right? It gets more and more something as they start revealing deeper layers. You're like, wow, I want to get to know this person, or wow, I want to get away from this person, right? So you get to know what's really going on as the layers are revealed. So very simple. When it shows us something important, that information is revealed in layers, and not just when we're interacting with people at dinner parties, but in the sale as well. And so we had an idea a long time ago that questions then should be layered. And when you do this, what you're going to find is people have told me a couple things over the years. Number 1, this works. Number 2, it's easy to learn. Why? It's how your brain is already wired. Some of you have been doing this when you meet people at a dinner party, or you meet someone and you start asking questions and things get interesting, right? And so it gets fun. But are you doing that when you sell? So let me give you a model that if you practice this for 1 hour, you can get good. I have literally, with Rebath people, taken people that were horrendous in asking questions. If I described in vivid detail how bad they were at asking questions, you would laugh or cry. It's that bad. And we were going through this with them. I taught them this model, and then I had them practice for an hour. Some of them, maybe an hour and 10 minutes. They needed that extra 10. And they got good. In fact, we shaved, I would say, years of trial and error learning off just by getting this model. So let me show you what it looks like. Questions are layered. So there's 3 levels or layers of questions that I want to call your attention to. We're going to walk through these. I'm going to give you some examples you can use immediately, and then I'm going to actually show you a buyer-seller interaction where you see them all in a Rebath scenario, okay? So the first one is first-level questions. These are those preliminary questions, like some of the things in your scripts, right? Those discovery questions, right? These are good questions. They're necessary questions. They reveal a thought, fact, behavior, or situation. Very important. First level questions, here's what we know. They unveil the first layer of a topic. So they're absolutely essential, but we also know some other things. They allow a salesperson now to earn the right to ask the next layer of questions, deeper levels of questions, which is really where a lot of the sale lies and the impact lies. Pretty conclusive data on this, and that is that these questions do not provide enough information to really tailor the sales presentation to your buyers, to really meet their needs, meaning they don't give you enough insight to really meet your potential client's needs. You're going to have to ask more questions. So they're important, but they're not enough. Okay. And what I've also found is both in Rebath and everywhere else that I've looked, is these are the levels of questions that mediocre salespeople ask almost entirely. All right. So people that are closing, get ready for it, 20, 30%, 35%, 37%, 39% in Rebath. These are the questions they focus on. Right? This is what they do. They ask first level, they just jump from first level to first level to first level to first level to first level, right? And that, because of that, they don't get enough insight to really be able to go and get those strong commitments like we talk about and really leverage the presentation the way it was created to be utilized. Okay. So let's take a look at a little bit examples of some first level questions I'll give you. And these are all good questions, not bad questions, but not enough. How did you find out about Rebath? How long have you been thinking about remodeling your bathroom? Have you sought any other professional advice regarding your bathroom? Right? When you think about remodeling your bathroom, what specific things are important to you? Right? All that gives you, those questions give you great insight, but oftentimes a follow-up question is needed. For example, number 3 there, have you sought any other professional advice regarding your bathroom? Why, yes, I have. Right? It begs for a follow-up question. Yeah, we had a contractor come out yesterday. Oh, okay. Many salespeople will go, oh, good to know. Thank you for sharing that. And then they'll move on as if nothing happened, right? And we want to go to the next layer, right? There's a lot of things we want to find out about how that went, what they liked, what they didn't like, why they said no. Clearly they did because you're here. And so a lot of information, right? But we have to have a method for doing that. So first level questions, good, but insufficient. So let's move on to the most consequential of all the levels, second level questions. Second level questions guide prospects in assessing and explaining essential information. Boy, these are really impactful questions. Here's what we know about them real quickly. They help us really understand our potential client's perspective, right? What do they think about their bathroom? What do they think about what's important to them? Do they buy into what you're sharing? Here's a little tip. Early on in the sale, prior to the digital presentation, most of your second level questions are explanation. You're asking for a deeper layer of information regarding something. In the digital presentation, often they're assessments, right? When you present a key value proposition about Rebath or against one of our competitors, you want to make sure they buy into that. How do you do that? Second level question. You want them to assess it, right? And get that buy-in. And that's going to help them think through it. We're going to control their thoughts. So you present something great about Rebath as a company, right? You talk about how great we are and all these accolades and all this stuff about your franchise. And they're sitting there listening, nodding their head, smiling at you, grunting once in a while, right? And do they agree? Do they understand? Are they even listening? You have no clue. But when you ask them a question, you do. When you ask them a question like a second level question such as, is Rebath the remodeler you would feel comfortable remodeling your bathroom? And they go, well, yes, or well, I'm not sure, or no, right? All of that, those are second level, that's a second level question. And that helps them think through it, right? That's that assessment that matters so much. But that's not all. What we found is this: top salespeople, the top performers in Rebath right now, people that are closing at extremely high rates and have very high average sales, they use second level questions more than any other level. This is where they live. Remember, the mediocre ones live in first level. The top salespeople, this is where they live. They live at second level. They are good at this, and that's what equips them to be a top performer. That's not all, though. These questions have been studied in many studies. One study out of Stanford found this, that they boost trust. When you ask people these questions, They look at you and they trust you more. They look at you as being more competent. Not only that, but they're also more likely to agree to a request, a persuasive request. When the question asker asks them then to do something, they're more likely to say yes. Not only that, oftentimes I have salespeople who will say, well, these are different. I don't know if I feel comfortable asking these kind of questions because they're used to asking first level questions. Maybe some of you are in that camp. You're like, I usually ask first level questions, and you want to hopefully begin to ask second level questions like top people do. And they say, well, it's different. It doesn't feel comfortable. I don't want to intrude on people. Really interesting study out of Harvard. They hooked people up to an fMRI machine, which measures brain activity. And they asked them second level questions. And they found that neural activity in the areas of the brain associated with reward and pleasure increased. Really interesting study. I came across this years ago. And I thought, wow, this is a big deal because it shows people enjoy answering these questions. So often when salespeople say, I feel uncomfortable or I don't want to intrude, the concern is on one side of the table, yours, not on theirs. And so you can really serve your potential client by using these questions. All right, let's get into some examples of them. What qualities do you look for when hiring someone or a company to do work in your home? Right? Great example of that. Does it make sense why so many people are choosing Rebath? Right? That's an assessment. Well, yeah, it does. Or, well, I'm not sure. Or, no, not really. All of which are useful for me to know. Would you ever consider investing in a product that did not include a comprehensive warranty? Well, no, I wouldn't. Another great assessment question, right? So second level questions, we want to use them strategically. A few examples there. But you want to use them early on to get a deeper explanation. And then later on in your presentation, get those assessments. In other words, when you are presenting something, especially in your digital presentation, one of the reasons why some of you are struggling with getting commitments is you don't prepare people to commit. In other words, you present like you're in a play. And I know in the past you might have been taught to do this. I can think of nothing that's more contrary to how our brains form buying decisions than doing that. You present like you're in a play. At the end of the play, you ask them to buy. Our brains don't work like that. You want to present value propositions, right? And then you want to ask them to think through it. Ask for their assessment of it, for their buy-in of it. If they agree when they think through it and say, yeah, that Rebath is who I want, right? Now they agree more. They understand it. If they don't, then I can address that and handle it now. Because if I don't handle it now, guess where I handle it? At the close, right? At the close. And so I don't want to do that. And so these questions really serve me. And so use them anytime you present something that matters in the digital presentation. That really matters. That's right before a commitment. Ask them for their assessment. Leverage this. Do that and watch what happens when you then ask for a commitment. Watch what happens. It gets much, much easier, right? We prepare people for the commitment. And you'll see some of that in the script, somewhat. When it's important for you to know what's going on there so you can customize it. And that's the benefit of this model is practice it for an hour, and then you'll be able to leverage it at will. You won't have to, oh, yeah, I'm supposed to ask a question here, right? No, you'll be able to do that on your own whenever you feel it's necessary. And so if you want to grab someone's attention, you ask them a question, right? Very, very impactful. One exercise that we're not going to do, but I want to give you as a good way to learn how to do this, and that I do with a lot of people in workshops, is what you see on the screen right now. Think about, find someone you know, friend, coworker, whoever, and think about any topic, like one of the 5 I've mentioned, and then ask them a first level question, and then try to ask them a few second level questions immediately after, right? So, for example, where do you live? I live in this town. Okay. Second level question. So, what was it about that town that drew you in? What was it about the house that made you decide to purchase it? What are some things you like about the house? What are some things you don't like about the house? You know, if you could change one thing about your yard, what would it be? Right. Just practice doing things like that. It's a very easy way to learn about second level questions. And I'll tell you something really interesting. Every time I do this with people in a workshop, it's always interesting for them and me, which is a great combination. And the reason why is because when they start asking like their coworkers, like, well, what are your hobbies? I like to golf. Well, why do you like to golf? Right? And they start asking those second level questions. They learn about each other. And within about 2 minutes, they'll be like, wow, I mean, it's really interesting, right? So you can do this not just in sales, but in every area of your life when you get bored. It's kind of fun at dinner parties, I found. People aren't boring, they're only boring if you ask first level questions. Trust me, you start asking second level questions, people get real interesting real fast. And because most people don't ask people second level questions, and because people enjoy being asked second level questions, they usually answer you and they give you some really interesting thoughts. So anyway, this is a good way to practice it so you can learn how to do it and practice it. So your first time through, just find a coworker and ask them where they went on vacation last time. Or what are something you've done recently to improve your health? And then start asking second level questions. And it gets real interesting real fast. And it's enjoyable and it's easy to do. Why? It's how your brain already works. You're tapping into something that's already there. So it's not a hard, intrusive questioning model. Let's go, though, to the final layer of questions, third level questions. What are these? These deal with desire for gain and fear of loss. They get to a very emotional level, and they're a way to really impact people emotionally. You're not going to live here. Remember I said mediocre salespeople live first level, great salespeople second level. Once in a while, you get the third level. Now, it might not be on every sale. Sometimes it will be. It really depends on the person you're talking to in the situation. But you want to know how to do this. You're going to live at second level if you're going to be really successful at selling. But you need to be able to go to third level when the situation warrants it. So how do I do that? A couple things we know about that. And this really gets into how our potential clients benefit from purchasing a product from Remath and having Remath remodel their bathroom. And it really focuses on moving them closer to what they want and further away from what they fear. The reality is they've invited you into their home, which is a very odd thing to do. They willingly, without any inducement, we're not giving them a box of steaks or anything like that, right? Or at least I don't think we are. I don't think most of you are, for coming out to their home. So why are they doing it? They're inviting a salesperson into their home. There's something they want, right? Or there's something they don't want to continue to have in their life regarding their bathroom. So there's a lot of emotions already going on, and often we can tap into that. And when we do, it gives us insights that really allows us to customize our sale. Some of you can probably relate to times where you've done this, maybe intentionally, maybe unintentionally. You got to a third level question and you got some insight into your customer, meaning what they want to gain or what they fear losing. And you were able to customize how you presented Remath to really show them how it moved them closer to what they want or further away from what they don't want, and they bought. And it was easy, and you got them on an emotional level you tapped into, and it made it easy for them to buy, and they saw high levels of value. And as you walked out of the home, you realized that the world is good, and right? And it's a wonderful thing, right? We can do that all the time. Anytime the situation is open for it with this model. So third level questions. So let's talk about what they are. I want to give you an example of what this can look like back to back to back, first, second, third level. So let's say that I'm in the home and I'm in there doing the inspection and I say, would you want to get another bathtub or have a shower put in? And my potential client says, I definitely want a shower. Okay, let's stop right there. This is where many salespeople stop, right? They go, you want a shower. Got it. I definitely want a shower. Okay, we can do that, right? They revert to order taker, right? It's like they're at McDonald's, right? I'll take a Big Mac, I'll take some fries. We can do that. Here's what it's going to cost. Okay, right? And that's not selling, that's order taking. And so we want to go one step further. So someone says, I definitely want a shower. There's emotion in that statement. I definitely want a shower. Okay, just so I understand, is there a particular reason why you're interested in the shower? You're there to help. It's a very logical question. All right. And that's a good second level question, helping get a deeper explanation, right? Just so I understand. And they say, yes, I want something that's easy to get in and out of. It's getting slightly more interesting now. I'm like, okay. That sounds good, right? That's useful information as you design the bathroom. When you talk about rebath, I mean, there's a lot of things you can do with that statement that had you not asked that question, right? If we just go back, let's just take it away. Let's live in reality. Most people stop right here. They never find anything out. They say, I want a shower. They go, got it. We can do that. We do lots of showers. Oh, okay, right? We want to go further. So we go into that second level question. And then we get, they want something easy to get in and out of. Let's go third level. I know, I just introduced you to this, but can't resist. Let's just go third level, see what happens. So what would that look like in a real world? So that I can recommend the best type of shower for you. Oh, I love the framing of that. May I ask why having a shower that is easy to get in and out of is important? Notice the mimicry or the mirroring of their verbiage. A very important thing. A lot of great salespeople do. A lot of reasons behind it. I won't get into them today. We have a white paper on this. We got videos on this. It's in my book as well. But when you mirror someone's verbal words, you're literally speaking their language, and rapport goes up, trust goes up. They're much more engaged because you're quoting them. Very impactful. Anyway, so that I can recommend the best type of shower for you, may I ask why having a shower that is easy to get in and out of is important? Here we go. Third level response. You guys ready? Here we go. Prospect says, I fell a few weeks back and I really need something that is safe and easy to get in and out of because I don't want to fall again. Are you selling that job? Yeah, most likely, unless you're horrible at this and not using anything in the presentation correctly. Yeah, right there, you're like, okay, the world just changed. Some of you have done this before where you've asked a question and the world changed. I can think back when I first got into sales and didn't know anything. Once in a while, I would stumble onto second level questions and then a third level question. I would just fall right into them, right? And go, whoops, what was that? And you recognize something happened. You don't know what happened, right? It's just like something changed. They changed. I changed. How I'm going to present just changed. Everything changed. What was that? A second and a third level question. And so when you know how to use these, you can do this predictably. You don't have to just wander into these kind of questions. You can deliberately trespass in there every single time. And when you do that, good things happen for them and you. So will it always go to a third level like this? No. No. But it always will if you don't ask. Will it always go to a second level? Yeah, you can go second level all day long once you learn how to do this. Second level questions are incredibly easy to use if you give me an hour of real practice, not watching a video for an hour or reading, my book on this for an hour, though that's not a bad thing to do. What I mean by practice is you practicing doing this out loud with another person or even by yourself. I'll take that. By yourself, practicing different scenarios, right? Write some responses on a flashcard, right? Write a bunch of them. Mix them up, pick one up. How would I respond to that? What's the second level question for that? Do that a bunch of times, right? Or talk to a coworker and go through the inspection or go through a certain part of the digital presentation and say, I want to ask a bunch of second level questions. I want to practice this, right? Use the exercise I shared with you a few minutes ago about asking them about their health or their hobbies or their vacation or where they live, and ask second level questions and try to even go to a third level and practice doing it. It's incredibly easy because, as I mentioned, it's how our brains are already wired to work. And so people, after giving me an hour of practice, people always come back and say, this really works. And then it was really easy to do, which is an awesome combination. Most things that work are not easy. And most things that are easy don't work. So what this one does, so this is a unique exception. So take advantage of it. So there they are, first, second, and third level questions. A big idea that, in fact, of everything that's in my book, we've had some really interesting responses to a number of the ideas. The biggest is those 6 whys. People have really latched onto that and done some really incredible things. The second one was this, the questions. First, second, and third level questions, this idea. So a lot of really successful people and companies have leveraged it. And many of the most successful salespeople in Rebath are using this as well at a very high level. And it's really interesting to see a couple things. When they start using it professionally, a few of them have told me they've also began using it personally in their personal lives, which I have not studied. I've just dabbled in myself, but some of them have some really interesting situations. and they've applied it to and have some really interesting outcomes that they've produced from asking these second and third level questions. So they're really impactful. They make life a little more interesting, and they make you more successful at selling, which is what we're focused on right now. So a couple key takeaways for me to share with you before we open it up to questions. And that is this: number one, watching this webinar is a good first step. If all you do is watch, you miss the point of it. We got to practice it, right? No one gets great at selling by watching another person talk about selling. I wish that were true. It's not. You get good at selling by practicing it. So set time aside, I would say today. How can I give an hour? And if you can't give an hour, give me 10 minutes. Don't tell me you can't give me 10 minutes, because that's nonsense, right? Give me 10 minutes, at least start the journey with me on these questions. Give me 10 minutes to improve your sales and make more money. 10 minutes sometime today, practice it. And then give me 10 minutes tomorrow. And give me 10 minutes like that until you get an hour. Give me 6 days. And we can change and improve drastically how you ask questions. So important takeaway number one, you got to use it, right? You can't just watch it. You got to practice doing it out loud, and that'll make a big impact. And second, once you practice this, begin using it. And I would recommend, to begin with, plan in the digital presentation. Start with this, where is one place you can ask for an assessment, and plan that out right away. Just say, I'm going to go in for this question right here and craft the question, memorize it. Now, as I said earlier in the beginning of the call, you don't want to memorize all your questions and stop there, but as an initial first step, it's a great one. Memorize one question. When I get to this part in the digital presentation on my next sale, my next lead, I'm going to ask this question to get buy-in to it. Try that. And then add another one. And then a few days later, add another one. And then start, get more and more comfortable with it. And within a matter of a few days to a week, you'll be asking these on the fly. The same is true with the discovery questions. Think of one discovery question that often warrants, which many of them do, a second level question, right? To go one step deeper and say, what is one I'm going to ask on the next sales call, and plan it out and just start doing it that way. How do you become great at selling or anything one step at a time? No one becomes great in a day, right? Some of you on here are very successful in selling. You've been very successful. How did you get that way? You didn't do it in one day, right? You practiced, you learned, you practiced, you learned day after day after day, and eventually you get to a really special place because you put the time in on a consistent basis. So that's what I recommend. Takeaway number two is to begin taking small steps in this, not just practicing, but planning. Where am I going to use this? And if you start doing that, you're going to start noticing the results, and you're going to get hungry for more and more and more of this, and you can use it throughout the entire sale as you get good over the next week or so. So that's my two big takeaways for this webinar. With that, I want to open it up to you with some questions. So as we've talked about questions, what questions do you have regarding questions? Wendy, do we have any questions from our participants?
Not quite yet. So just as a reminder, everyone, on your screen you have the questions box. So go ahead and type those questions in right now so that we can take advantage of David being on the line to give him some real field questions. David, anything as far as questions you've gotten lately regarding this topic?
Yeah, this is such an important one. The two takeaways I shared get to the heart of many of the questions. How do I learn this? What's the best strategy for doing it? The incremental strategy, and giving an hour of practice time, and then starting to plan it out. And then I would say, if possible, try to find a live person to practice this with. Sometimes that's hard to do. And in some parts of the presentation, you can practice a lot on your own. With questions, to really get good, you got to practice with another person. And so the good news is, as you're learning these questions, as I mentioned that exercise a while ago, find someone in your personal life, if you don't have anyone professionally you can practice with, and just ask them second level questions, right? And it gets really interesting. Just trust me on that. It gets really interesting really fast, and I think you'll be it'll be a rewarding experience. And that's a great way to learn, is to do and just start doing it. And learning how to ask questions is a little bit of a messy process. It's very dynamic, and that's why you can't memorize these at a really high level entirely. You got to be able to customize them to the person you're talking to. So it's a very dynamic process. And so to get to that level, you really got to practice doing them. But this is one area where you can practice outside of the sales arena. It works in any part of your life, and you can ask second level questions. And as you get good at asking them in one area, you can easily bring it over to sales. So what I would say is start practicing them and leveraging them today. Just think of how you want to do it. Professionally is best, practicing with a colleague. But if you don't have that option, practice with someone who doesn't know you're practicing on them. Right? Just ask them questions. They'll be interested. They'll be engaged. They'll be like, wow, I never knew you cared this much, right? This is really nice. You're really a caring, nice person, right? Uh, sure, I am, and you're practicing as well. So you get two benefits out of it, right? Everyone thinks you're a good person, and you get better at selling. So best of both worlds. So that's one a final takeaway I guess I would have as well.
Okay, we got a couple questions in. The first one, what are a couple of good first level questions to ask in the inspection phase?
Mm, a really good question. So for those, we have a lot of those in the script. So in the sales script, you're going to have a lot of good questions right there that are going to help you dive into what's going on. So what I would say is if you're wondering about first level questions, a lot of that is in the script, like in the discovery and the inspection. So I would refer you to there. I think that's a great starting place rather than me trying to muddy the waters with giving you some additional ones. Focus on the script and what's in there, and then think about how can I go one layer deeper when appropriate.
Okay, our next question they're wondering, is this a second level question? What prompted you to act on this now?
What prompted you to act on this now?
Is that a second level question?
Yes, it would be. Yeah, so I'm hoping that they're using that when they're in the discovery, asking someone, so what prompted you to have us invite us into your home at this point? So they're trying to get at that. So yeah, that would be a good explanation, right? They're trying to say, well, what was it that happened? So I've had this problem in my bathroom. We've been thinking about doing something for 8 years. Okay. Well, can I ask what prompted you to invite us into your home at this point, right now? Well, I want there, and we can go with that. So yeah, that would be a good second level question. That would be a great one to ask when someone, for example, tells you they've been thinking about remodeling their bathroom for a while, or this has been on our to-do list. Why now? What happened? Oftentimes, there's some really interesting information you'll get there that you can leverage throughout the entire sale. So yeah, that would be actually a good second level question, depending on how it's used. I have heard a few times people use that very poorly at the end of the sale, or no, at the beginning of the sale when they're trying to induce objections. But that's a whole nother topic, and hopefully that's not what the question asker was trying to use it for.
Okay, it looks like that might be the end of our questions. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I would say this is a big one. I think looking at this, especially with the webinar we did last month on the discovery, for those of you who are on that, putting those together along with some of the previous ones too on different parts of the sale, this is a big one. So I would say really focus on those second level questions, and I think you'll be very excited by the results they produce. So thank you so much for all your attentiveness and your time today, and looking forward to hearing great things as you guys implement these strategies on your next sales call and beyond.
Great. Thank you so much, David. And we'll speak to you again in September. Again, everyone, I want to remind you that this session was recorded and we will be posting it on RB Academy this month. If you need a copy right away, please email me at training@rebathcorp.com and I'll get that survey right over to you. Please take a few minutes to complete the brief survey that will be sent to you once this webinar ends. Have a great rest of your week, and thank you so much for your participation in the Skills Training Sales webinar. This concludes today's session.